Welcome everyone to this sacred conversation, and today I have Melissa Thornberry with us. Thornberry, my apologies.
Strawberry, yeah, bloody confusing.
There you go. That's a great start here. And Mel, would you be preferred to be called Mel or Melissa? Because I know you as Mel. What would you prefer me to
Oh,
call
everyone
you?
knows me as Mel.
Okay, so Mel.
Everyone shortens it, so it's cool.
Mel's kindly come late, whoever's watching, viewers, to talk to us about anxiety, panic attacks, and how that's not only affected her life, but also her business. And she was happy to come because I know her we know each other really helps. She supports me in my business with her photography, branding, doing all the overlays. But at the same time, we've got to know each other personally through our experiences of mental health and how to support each other in that. And this is why I really want to talk about this. So Mel, welcome. And thank
Thank
you.
you.
Would you like to start with just talking a little bit about who you are?
So yeah, I'm Mel, as Chantel said, and a photographer. I've recently moved into sort of all different kind of avenues because I like having options and different things to keep my busy brain entertained. If the head gets bored, oh god, it's all sorts of mischief incurs. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point you've just made. We've sort of pretty much gone into it about having a busy mind. For you, it needs to be busy because, as you said, it can go elsewhere.
positively busy, yes.
Yes. And I think that's an interesting point. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that? Has that contributed to panic attacks and anxiety? Or, would you like to go into that so we can just talk to
Yeah.
listeners what that means to have a busy mind that's not positive?
Yeah, no. Well, I was diagnosed with anxiety a few years ago now. Quite a few. It's been quite a ride, but mine was always on, if that makes sense. Like it was just if you can imagine being in your house, turning on every device you have, your computer, your radio, oh, that sounds old school, your radio, your phone, your Googles, your whatever you've got that possibly makes noise, and having that all inside your head
Mm.
all the time.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't, I couldn't sleep properly because the brain wouldn't shut down. It took me ages to finally able to get to sleep. But even then, I'd wake up all the time. During the day, it was the same thing. It was very hard to focus because there was so much going on in my mind. But then I could never get any thoughts out either. It's like a big confused jumble.
Mm.
So yeah, trying to get that to calm
Mm.
was really hard, or even to the point where I'd go to bed and I'd listen to podcasts or something like that, so my brain had something to focus on, so it would just stop. I suppose the noise as such would just sort
Mm.
of would stop.
I find that really interesting saying that you'd actually listen to a podcast because for me, as I'm hearing you, and I get that's it's like, wouldn't that be more noise? Wouldn't that like be adding to it? But clearly for you, that was a way to support yourself from what you're saying.
It was I think it was just because it gave, it's a bit like, when you've had a really busy day and you're at work, you've got so much going on and your brain's just going 50 miles an hour, and then you sit down and you watch something on TV. Now, it could be a really interesting show, it could be a complete waste of time, but all you need to do is just sit
Yeah.
and zone, and your brain just kind of, everything goes because you're so focused on whatever you're watching. As I said, it could be something, it could be a documentary, it could be something really dodgy. But it's just that, and that's what the podcast did when I'd go to bed. It would be just something for my brain or my mind to focus on. So it was only one thing. It wasn't, 50 things.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point you're making. It's one thing versus, as you said, all the
Yeah.
50. Did you find that that would help you initially? Did you have to listen like to numerous podcasts, long ones, short ones? So how did you get into that? Did you create a routine, and do you still, and I'm asking you three questions here to so
Yep.
that put a little bit more into your brain. And do you find you need them as much now?
Sometimes I still need them. I find I've changed a lot of what I listen to, because you need to be careful when you're doing that. Um, that you're not listening to anything that's, can be negative to your mindset or your mood as well. Because I listen to a great variety of things. There's also not to watch things that are funny either, because otherwise you spend more time giggling and laughing than going to sleep. There's one really good podcast that I quite liked, that was really good, and it all depended. I think depending how busy my mind was, how I was feeling at the time, as to whether I'd have to reset the timer and listen to it for another half an hour, or whether I'd have to sort of go back and restart the episode because I didn't know what happened, because I seemed to fall asleep really quickly. So it all sort of depended, I think, as to what was happening, what level my anxiety was at the time.
Yes.
Because the higher the anxiety, the more it sort of happened. And it was also not just in the mind too, it was also in the body as well. So yeah, I think it just depended.
Yeah. Now, are you happy to share, like, to talk about how did this anxiety come about? How did you know to go and seek help, or what happened that triggered you to go and get, like, I don't want to call this a diagnosis, or to understand?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was when my son was, he was in preschool. He's now 12, nearly 13, he'll tell me. But that's when I was basically diagnosed with it. But for many years before that, was always full on, quite a short fuse, kind of, quick to anger at things, and whatnot. And I think looking back, I know a lot of, I couldn't control anything. I couldn't control how I was feeling. I couldn't control how I'd react to things. So everything tended to be controlled with anger. It was like, it was the only thing, so I was very stiff, very quick to, and it's like, well, no, this is the way it's done, no, this was it. I actually ended up with Bell's palsy. So I was laid up with that I was laid up for that for a week, but it takes a bit longer to actually get back to some sense of normalcy with that one. And I think that was the body telling me to just stop. So I think I'd had the anxiety and panic attacks, especially anxiety, for a lot longer than I thought. But I'd found, and looking back, negative ways to cope. I won't say manage, because it certainly wasn't. It was just coping. It was just one in front of the other. So then after that, things came out. Anyway, the GP I had, she was amazing. So I went and saw a psychologist, whatever, which one it is, can never remember which one they are. And so we talked through a lot of things, especially a lot of anger and things like that. Then I got to a point where I just felt like each session we were rehashing the same thing. So I says, no, I think we're done with that. But it wasn't really gone anywhere. So I was still quick to, blow a fuse at something so ridiculous and so meaningless. I know, well, my husband and my son, eggshells, that's what they walked on all the time, because you never knew what would set me off, or if anything wouldn't, I'd just go. So yeah, and then it was, I tried sort of but nothing, I don't know. I had friends that supported me along the way, which was really good. And then I just got to a point where I thought, no, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't like it. It's not fair on my family. Even parents and everything too, because I'd completely distanced myself from everybody. So they were just like, well, what have we done? It's like, well, nothing. And so, so I decided that, and I ended up being invited over for a business and mindset retreat in Bali a few years ago. This is sort of, condensed version, but to actually be the photographer for the event. So they had photos for, for future retreats and stuff that they did. The amazing bonus was I was able to go and actually take part in the training. So the business side of things and the mindset. And that's when I met the mindset coach that I worked with for, I want to say maybe 2 years, just under 2 years. Made a massive difference. Massive difference. I wasn't saying I wasn't still having the panic attacks and things like that, but I think I had more of an understanding. I had a new way of looking at things, a bit more on the positive side than, everything, instead of the negative side. Quieting the mind.
Yes.
Helped.
Yes. Sorry, coming in here, quieting the mind in a different way.
Yeah. So I was say, it's tough work. Because you've got to face a lot of stuff that you don't want to. You've got to forgive people for yourself that you don't want to. You feel very, very vulnerable doing it. It's definitely not easy, but it's definitely worth, when you come through the other side, or you feel that shift and you work through that block, whatever you've had, as much as hard as it is, it's worth it. You're one step closer to, things feeling a lot brighter and lighter.
Yeah, and your life does really change, doesn't
It
it?
does.
And I think an interesting point you made beforehand, you were angry as a coping mechanism rather than
Yeah,
as a management. And this is what I think
yeah,
often we don't realize, that we are only coping. Because I don't know about you, but I
yeah,
know for myself and others I've spoken to, I'm sure we've talked about this, we put on a facade, don't we? Well, I'm
yeah,
coping,
definitely, definitely.
and then I don't know about whether you use the word shame or embarrassment, but then you do lash out or get angry,
Yeah,
then that's another triggering, isn't it? So then you do,
yeah,
so from what you said, you started to withdraw.
yeah. And the thing was, is because I'd lash at something that pissed me off. Sorry, um, or so I would lash out.
Yeah,
And I mean, I've lost friends along the way.
yeah.
And then the ones that have stayed, I'm eternally grateful for, and actually surprised they're still
Mm.
around, because looking back, I wasn't a nice person. And there was a lot of embarrassment and shame around that, which
Mm.
I've also had to work on and forgive myself for, going, well, yeah. And it was hard because I could see myself doing it, but I couldn't stop myself doing it.
Mm. Mm.
um so there's been, sort of lots of work along the way, sort of a variety of different things. I think the big thing which made a difference, to my family, and that was when I could actually, articulate things and put words to
Yes.
how it was. I mean, I remember one friend asking, well, what's the difference? Everyone has anxiety. What's the difference between, you know, what I deal with and what you have? And I said, the difference is it's like everyone has anxiety from day to day. I mean, not everything's easy, so you get anxious about it, but put that on the extreme scale of
Yeah.
everything. So you're not just nervous, you're absolutely terrified, to the point where you're in tears, you're shaking, you can't breathe, hence the panic attacks. I think that was the thing of being able to articulate, so I could say how I was feeling, what was causing it, and why I could do that but not that, which made it easier
Yeah.
things. So I mean, there's been constant sort of work, and then I'd feel myself going back, sort of sinking, never back to where I was, because that wasn't, nice place to be for anybody. And I also dusted off, going, oh no, people have got it worse than I do. And I think that was the biggest thing, was minimizing what I was going
Yeah.
through. So when I feel myself dip, I find, I have things to bring myself up. And now I'm working with, Michelle Share. Sorry, Michelle. So she's a was it self-confidence, and clarity type coach. So I've been doing a bit of work with her recently, which has really made a big difference. It's sort of taken what I already know, then kind of, because I'm obviously in a different place, need different work, and lifted that again. So, gaining more confidence, getting rid of, that voice that goes, you shouldn't do that. People will see you. And things like that. So that's made a massive, massive difference. And even she said, from the time we've been, until now, she's noticed a huge, huge difference. And then also the sessions that we've had together, doing
Yeah.
Reiki
Thank
and
you.
things like that too. When I've had a block and not been able to really move past it, and you can't really put your finger on it.
Mm.
Um, and we've been able to sort of shift that too, which has then enabled me to then move forward again.
Mm. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. And I appreciate hearing that, because what you're giving, well, for me and the listeners, is that there is a variety of things you can do, and there's a
yeah,
time and a season. So like you said, you worked with a psychologist like initially. It's sort of like then that came to an end, you needed to do something else,
mm,
and I appreciate your vulnerability of sharing. It is painful, it is very raw. And I know for me, I got this image when you said that. For me, when I had mine, you're in such mud, you sort of think, how did I get here and how am I going to get out? Because you can't see
mm.
it. You don't want to go back. You don't want to go forward. You can't see it. So there's this whole sort of melee happening in there, isn't there? Like you said. And then finding the words, I think that for me struck me, because I couldn't find the words to my trauma either.
It's hard.
It is hard to how to explain. And then there's a relief when you finally go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is explaining. Then you can explain to, because in our world, people want to understand or get explanations. Otherwise, they don't know how to
Yeah.
deal with you.
No, they don't know how to help or to support you. And
That's
sometimes it's
right.
just a matter of, I mean, I think I'm sort of one of those people that, I had a panic attack one time, and I drove myself, 30, 40 minutes the other side of town to get home. But I had mum on the phone the whole time. And she's going, I
Yes.
don't know what to say. I said, I just need you there so I know someone's
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And it wasn't because I couldn't, it's one of those things. I wasn't dangerous on the road because I was hyper aware of everything. And also
Yeah.
because I was hyper aware. So I saw everything. When I got to mum's place, I couldn't remember fully because she's a bit
Yeah.
closer than I am to where I was. But then I fell apart. Like, what do you need? I said, I need, because my thing was get in the shower, close the doors in the shower. Nobody can, safe space. Everyone, you sort of need to have that. And she's like, what do I said, I just need to, and I've learnt over the numerous ones to just write it out. The more I
Yes.
tried to fight it, and that's me driving it. People
Yes.
say, don't fight it, don't fight. I said, but the thought of staying on the other side of town, having to wait 30, 40 minutes for someone to come and get me, then 30, 40 minutes to drive back to getting to my safe space, and then terrified because my car's left out there.
Yeah.
I actually felt calmer getting in the car, being hyper aware, seeing everything,
Mm.
having someone on the phone that can just go, where are you? Every so often a word, or I can just say something but somebody's there. That made me feel more comfortable than waiting
Yeah.
all that time.
Yeah.
So I suppose it was, one of the functioning panic attackers. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think we can still function. I think that's a really good point. Is And now I talked about this in a couple of my YouTube videos for that reason. What is a panic attack? And then how to support someone, like what not to say, and like saying, I'm here. So your mum did that. I'm here. You're on the phone. I will stay here. So she held you with love, empathy, and understanding. She didn't question you. She knew you're doing it safe, like you said. And she understood you needed to come home. And she gave you the space to go and have your shower because that's your thing to do.
Mm.
And I think another thing, is interesting for listeners to know, you need to find, each one of us needs to find what suits us, isn't it?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Whereas my
it's
place is you close the shower door, nobody can come in.
that's right.
You
All
know, you
right.
can go and
Yes.
sit in the toilet if you want to. Just close the lid, sit down, but close the door because that's where you feel that nobody's going to
Yeah.
not intruding, but you're not going to have to deal with anybody.
Yeah. Because at that point, you don't know how to deal with anyone. And the thing
No,
is with those, and I'd like you to confirm for this for you too, because I know when I had panic attacks or had them and anxiety, there's no logic. I mean, yeah,
no.
there's the logic is there's no logic when you're in it. So there's no point saying to you, oh, it's not that bad or whatever. It's just for you right at that moment, it is so real.
Yeah, and I mean, even to the point sometimes where someone's trying to support you and they're going, they're patting, rubbing on your back, and just breathe, and I just feel like telling them to just go away. If I hear one more person tell me to just breathe, if I could breathe, I would.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But as I said to from the earlier ones to the later ones, which thankfully, touch wood, I haven't had for quite some time now. I've learned to just ride it out, not fight it, not try and fight the breathing. If I can't breathe, if I stay calm and just ride it out, the breathing comes better. But and then I'll pretty much just go to bed and that. But my recovery is much quicker too.
Yeah.
Instead of it possibly being 2 days before I can really function again, I might go to bed, have a good night's sleep. I might sleep in the next morning, but I feel like I can actually do something the next day. I look after myself. I don't push anything. If I've got work to do, I don't push it. If I feel like doing some, I sit for 5 minutes. I could sit for an hour. It depends how I'm feeling, but I don't force anything. I just sort of take it as it comes, as to what my mind and body wants to do, not what I should be doing.
Exactly. And I like that because that's exactly right. Because I know for me, panic attacks, it can take me, like you said, you feel like, I know for me, I sometimes feel like the bus is hitting and the next day I'm like a bit like punch drunk. Like
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened here, and it's, as you said, it's about honoring and nurturing ourselves. And I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
And that might be a segue now because we talked about how it affected your personal life. How did you find affecting you in business?
In business, it's kind of funny. It's like I had two personas.
Mm.
So I was one way
Mm.
at home, and then obviously being a photographer, once I had the camera in the hands or I was talking about photography, if I was going to have a meeting with a potential client, it was like the persona came on. So right, I was the photographer and I could talk about that. So it was sort of like my mind was distracted. And then once, it sort of sounds funny, someone that has anxiety and panic attacks can get up in front of 60 or more people, get everyone's attention to move them in for one big group shot and direct people and be funny and be, and things like that. But it's literally like sort of a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, I was this way. But then put the camera in my hand, and I'll look over here because my camera's sitting there.
Yeah.
But put the camera in my hand, it was like, right, professional mode, and I was conversational. I was, I could joke, I could do this and that and just sort of go with the flow. Come home, my camera bag went down, I'd go and have a shower, and the following day I was out. There was no asking me questions about anything. It was all about recovery. I'd download the pictures to my computer because I always like to do that fairly quickly. So there's, multiple points of having them. But yeah, it was just, and whether I'd get to the photos. I mean, I never did them the same day or the following day because I needed to kind of clear the mind. And even now I still do the same thing. So I can, whether I'm doing, portraits or I'm doing product photography or whatever I'm doing, I always download them and then leave them to the following day to actually go back and have a look. So I'm sort of looking at them through fresh eyes. So whether that's something I've taken from there when I just needed to rest and do nothing, I'm not sure. I find it works better for my workflow that
That's
way.
good. And I like that because I think you're right. And I think that persona, because I've also talked about that. So this is why I love these conversations, because after that also we are taught in this world to have a persona anyhow. Like when you walk out the door, you leave it all behind. So when you go to work, whether you go to a career or an employee or business, so we have that facade. So of course it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yet as you said, in that time, you are the photographer.
Yeah. And it was also, I think, my work ethic too.
Yes.
It's sort of, especially when you're doing weddings, that's a big thing. And it was important for me to be there for my client. It was important for me to give them, the best work that I can possibly do. And, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to do this. It's important for me to do them, especially when they've asked me to be part of, their wedding day. I mean, it's not a small thing to do. It's not easy to choose who you're going to have. So therefore, they've chosen me out of, possibly numerous. So it was important for me to be there. So I had to, I suppose, find a way. I think it just sort of happened that way, as to, having that persona, but I need to find a way that I could cope with that. I mean, I've had panic attacks walking out the door. Shot a wedding, and nobody would know the difference. Then I'd come home, get in the shower, and I'd continue having said panic attack. I just finish it up later. It's like, half, but
and no wonder then you're
I have to be there
exhausted.
for them.
Yes, that's right. And I love what you're saying. So I know when you work with me and do my work, we've got to comfort with each other. Number one, I needed to learn not to say, "Can you do it tomorrow?" Because suddenly I had left it too late. But what I loved about what you do is by setting your boundaries, and then we work together, was I need to sit on this overnight, or I need to something or other. And because I know you so well now and I understand how you work and you understand me. So you knew you want how I wanted it done. I needed simplicity. But I loved about you going, and I knew that. I knew when you went away and said not overnight, even though I had my own moment. So listen, everyone, it was my then story. Misha was like, no, I want it now. I want it now. Because that was my own anxiety and panic. And, for my business, then I just learned to go, you know what, it's okay. Because I knew you'd come back.
Yeah, and as we've spoken about before, sometimes you'll give me, whether it's some, Canva design work to do, or whether it's video work. Sometimes, we've spoken about before, sometimes it's a thing of, I can watch the video and I can start doing it, putting it together, and then I go, it's not gelling.
Yeah.
It's not gelling. Now, I used to force it and make myself finish editing photos, or now doing videos and things like that. And then I'd go back to them later and flick through them, and I'd end up redoing them because they were just atrocious. I didn't like the look and the finished product that I was putting out when I was forcing to do it.
Yeah.
So it ended up taking me possibly twice as long. So I've also worked out that sometimes when you've given me an idea for something, I'll go away and I'll think about it, and then all of a sudden the idea comes to me and I go, here's some options, what do you think? And then we kind of meld them together. And it's the same with everything. I mean, if there's a deadline, it's done by the deadline. Once again, it's just how I work. It's got to be ready for this day. But it's also a thing of, I've worked out that the way my mind works, it needs to kind of think and kind of percolate a little bit. So then it comes out as more of it's a clearer picture, and I'm not just doing it and then going, oh, which is then going against what I believe in my ethic of, because then I'm giving out, excuse the thing in, but half-assed work, which isn't who I am.
No, it isn't. But I'd also like to say, knowing you, you think it's half-assed, the other person wouldn't, but you also want to put a beautiful energy into that, because that is what often I think people don't understand, is that subtle energy. And that's what I love about you, and what I love about when we can give each other trust, like you trust me too. You come back and do something quirky. So I know for me, because I've given you the brief to go be yourself, and then I give it back, and then I realize, oh, I don't know. So then because this is about me taking responsibility too, and my anxiety. But then I can go, like, I go away and go, actually, I really like that, because what you're doing is giving me the gift of also stretching my mind. Stretching, and I know you understand me, and that's what I love about you and the work that you do. And I've watched you with others, like is it Sarah with the jewelry, because we know you, we give you that freedom. You know how to take that freedom, but you also know if there's a deadline, you now know. So listen, anyone who's watching is learning to understand how you operate. So if that deadline might be that you need to give yourself some, and just go back to the other person, say, look, I'm sorry, I can't work in that deadline. It's having that courage, isn't it, to do that?
I think so, because a lot of people think, and I think it's, whether it's through TV or YouTube or whatever you watch, you always watch everything condensed.
Yeah.
So I like to use the example of, my husband is an automotive spray painter by trade. But years ago, used to have all those shows where they, in an hour show, and they've stripped a car and they've made it all look all fancy, the paint and the interior and the stereo and the whole bloody lot's there. So people can understand when it takes him of solid work, it can take him a week or 2 weeks to paint a car, and go, but it takes that long? And I'm going, well, yeah, because what you don't see behind the scenes is the round-the-clock work, the massive team they've got, not just one person. It's the same with photography and video and things like that. Is you see, oh no, you just do them. You just put the things on there, you just chop it. But everyone does, and it's the same as photography. Oh, you just Photoshop it. But what they don't understand is when you're Photoshopping, no matter what your exposure is, it can take you, especially if I'm doing wedding photography, it's nothing for it to take half an hour to do one image.
Yes.
So the quickest part is actually shooting the wedding, but it can take weeks afterwards in the post process, and that's only if you've got one job to shoot and then edit. Sometimes it can take longer depending how much. I mean, some photographers take longer because they put a lot of work into it. My work, I like to think, so it feels very natural. So some people put a lot of work in removing everything, whereas I like to have a bit more of that natural feel. But it's nothing for it to take. And I mean, I've never timed it. Some images could take me longer.
And I appreciate you saying that, because what I'm hearing is also you now know what's right for you. You now know how you need to do it. You're now supporting your anxiety and panic attacks, not only at home or in your private life and personal life, but also now in business. And that is reflecting through, because I know, even though obviously we can't do photography because we're on the other side of the country, but I do know you pick up on things, like you hear, you listen. You have that innate ability to listen and understand, and then go, right, here it is. And I'm like, oh, wow, what a gift that is. But in that gift, you've been needing to wrap it up to support yourself. And that's the gift you've given us today, sharing this with me, but also the listeners, of how you support yourself. And that's why I wanted to do this conversation. I'm so thankful you came on board, because we're all so different. Okay, the anxiety itself is the same, like panic attacks, but it's how it comes, how we handle it, how we do it. That is where, and that's where empathy comes in, as Brené Brown talks about, you know?
Yeah. And I think the work I've done over years, I mean, it's not been solid years that I've done it. It's, you know, been bits, and then I say, okay, I need to do something because I'm for, and as I said before, I refused to go back to where I was because it was a very dark place to be. And I like where I am now. But you also need to sort of stretch and find new. So you can't be comfortable with just one person. You know, if you feel like you've got everything you can out of that person, don't be scared to go, you know, this has been an amazing journey. You've helped me so much, but I need something else. It could be slightly different work, different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Because to go back and do the work that I was doing, you know, 6-7 years ago, would be no good now.
Yeah.
You know, I need different and different outlooks. I think it's a thing of, and as much as I say, you know, I've got the, you know, that Jekyll and Hyde between, you know, what I am here and what I am, you know, we'll pick up the camera and then it's the professional persona. So it's a different me. And I'm not saying that I don't still use it, because I don't think, you know, anxiety or panic attacks really go anywhere. You just know how to manage and manage and work through them better. And I think what used to trigger me before doesn't now,
Yes.
but I'm in a completely different place now. So even though I'm still getting it, it's over different things. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I think having those personas is good, but in the long term, to be writing that all the time, I think would have been very unhealthy for me. As I said, sometimes I still need it and I use it, but majority of the time, I'm actually showing up as me, not as photographer Mel.
And I like that, and that's a lovely,
perfect.
and I think it's a lovely way to wrap up, because I agree with you. I think we do still need to have those personas, but you're doing it out of awareness. It is part of you, like your anxiety. Well, I know for me, it's always going to be part of me, but it no longer control. Like what
is me.
Exactly right. And it's no longer controlling you. You now know what you need to do. So there is still going to be, but I know, like, even now, and as we, you know, like you said, you're still the photographer. So I'm still also the psychotherapist. So I will still have a persona when I step out, because part of it is you as the client is important at that point in time. And like you, I've learned, like, we need to learn just how to be able to support that.
Yeah. And I think it's supporting and managing. It's not it's not just coping. It's not just one foot in front of the other sort of thing. It's, you have ways of it's a managing, it's a supporting, whether it's with others, whether it's supporting yourself. As I said, using the photographer Mel as an example once again, it's I think it's I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I know for me to be living like that all the time would have been really unhealthy.
And I totally agree with you. And you wouldn't be enjoying life, and that reflects in both your person and both in your business. And you would know, you know, the photos wouldn't be quite what you want them to be, which is that beautiful energy that you put behind that. Thank you, Mel. I so appreciate this. Now I'm going to let everyone know that the links to contact Mel will be in the description. But you have a website. You're on Instagram?
I have a website, have Instagram, have Facebook. Yes, that's where I'm at.
That's where we're at. Just okay. Facebook, it's called Mel Thornberry, isn't it?
Mel Thornberry Photography. Yep.
And your website is
www.melthornberryphotography.com.
Oh, it is that.
I can't remember if there's an AU or not. If one doesn't work, try the other.
That's okay.
We'll write it down for you.
It's going to be downstairs. Gosh, it's going to be it's going to be in the description anyhow. So thank you everyone for watching. If you've got any questions or any comments, we'd love to hear. One of us will get back to you, because it's an important conversation to talk about, and not to, you know, you might feel a bit shy or embarrassed, but you can contact me personally and Mel via her, you know, if you want to just reach out and just talk to more about who she is and the work that she does. Thank you, Mel. And to everyone listening, I look forward to, if you want to subscribe, and we've got lots more goodness coming up. And and if you have anything to share or would like to be part of this, let me know. Thank you.